About me, I am a CNCF ambassador. I also have my own uh, hardware meetups that I keep. I like hardware, so if anyone would like to connect with me, you could just scan the QR code. Uh, I built this cool e-paper card, so that doesn't require power. Uh, yeah, I also do a little bit of hardware meetups, and I like Lindy Hop, which is like a American dance form, African American dance form. Pretty sure it's very popular in Bangalore. If nobody has heard of it, I did go yesterday, and it was a good spot at the Jelly Roll Dance Club. So I will go Saturday, I guess, to another one. Yeah, I also work with home labs a lot, so that's also my area of interest. Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about API mocking, and I think how many of you are developers here? Was it quite a few? Okay. So API mocking in a nutshell is basically something that, say you're a tester or you're a developer, but you have requirements to build, but you don't have a live API, right? You need to build a database, you need to like sort of get data sets, generate data like using either Faker or like random data or something like that, right? Which is a time consuming process, and you could do that all of that like probably in 5 minutes, but because of having to do 10 different steps, it takes a lot of your time. So API mocking is a solution that uses something like stubs or something like that. So stubs are like just generated or like static data that you can use to sort of test your applications or test an API or something like that. Today I'm going to be talking about something called as Microcks, which is like an open source testing platform, and I'm going to be using something called as Gloo Gateway, which is the product that we have at Solo.io that is built over HTO and Envoy. So unfortunately, the demo isn't working, but I will try my best to show a little bit of the demo. But yeah, so yeah, this is about Microcks, and it's an open source mock testing framework. So basically, it will help you mock all your. Uh, so has anyone heard of different API schemas like Open API, gRPC, GraphQL, and like GraphQL? So what it does is basically it takes its two inputs and it will give you an entire mocking system that you can build on. Uh, it also has a very nice integration with Postman. So if you would like to read about that, you can just go to this link, and there's like an article by them on how they have integrated Postman basically. So if you've anyone heard of Postman? No, I have to ask because then I can like give an overview of Postman. So like for those who don't know about Postman, Postman is like an client to like curl basically. So if you don't like the terminal, you most likely use Postman as a client. Postman has this really cool thing that I found out about when I was working with this presentation. Basically, it's called collections. So it can like sort of give you an entire collection of something as simple as GraphQL. So if you give it a, you just import your schema and it will give you an entire collection with all the uh, endpoints basically. So yeah, about Glue Gateway, it's a cloud native gateway. So we run and build on Kubernetes, and basically anything anywhere that Kubernetes runs, the product runs, and it's also not just a GraphQL server. Since we are built over HTO, we can do things like multi-cluster routing or things like rate limiting, external authentication, and all these things, without having to sort of have multiple servers for this. Anyone here is familiar with service meshes? Oh, okay, very few people. So, a brief about service meshes. I don't have a slide, but service meshes are basically something to standardize application networking, right? So, if you worked with microservices, tough crowd. So, microservices is something that is like an Uber for your applications or Grab here in Thailand for your application. So basically, your application just sits in the back of the taxi, and the car will take you wherever it has to go. Do things like navigate, uh, stop at signals. So like if you're speeding, it will probably rate limit you or something like that. So service meshes is something that came out to standardize all these in a cluster, in VMs and all, right? Before that, what used to happen is, say I have microservices and I wanted to do something like rate limiting. Now I had to sit and do rate limiting on inside the application, which would mean that the developer has to sit and write a rate limit algorithm inside the application. Same with external authentication, same with TLS certs, right? TLS, whose favorite is TLS here? Okay, so TLS is one of the major, I would say, pain points with customers, like rotating, or with just developers, like rotating certs and all is a big pain point. But yeah, so that is what HTO basically is, and HTO is an open source service mesh. You feel free to try it out and let me know how your experience is with HTO. But yeah, so we've built over HTO, and all we do is provide support. Like we have N-3 support, and we do a lot of cool stuff. I will show that in some time. But yeah, so this is how the demo that was supposed to work looks like. So basically, you have Microcks that is running in Kubernetes, and you have a normal Tracks API that is like running in Kubernetes, right? So that is your production, that is your mock. And using Glue Gateway, you could just like do a header, and it would route to either the Tracks API or your mocking server, right? So with Glue Gateway, with GraphQL, you get things like query whitelisting, rate limiting, external authentication, and query caching. And the best part about this is your GraphQL server is within your gateway. So if anyone here has played around with Kubernetes, you have things like ingress. So we don't use the ingress, we use the Kubernetes gateway resource, which is a much flexible and much newer custom resource definition. So Glue Gateway sort of just adds the gateway CR, and you can configure things like all these on your routes. So you don't have to manage a separate GraphQL server, a separate rate limit. You have to manage maybe like a Redis to store your rate limiters, but that's it. So yeah, so Microcks is pretty simple. To show you all how simple it was for me, since I just started using it like few days ago. Uh, this is how the Microcks UI looks like. And you can see here I have a bunch of APIs. So the main one that is currently the book info one that is in use. And if I just import this, okay, let me show you how it's imported. So this is a gist that I created. So there are certain nuances when using GraphQL with Microcks. You have to have a Microcks ID on the top to like tell Microcks about it. So this will automatically create a mock for you in the in your UI basically. So this is one GraphQL schema that you have to sort of import. Okay. So I did face a little bit of issues when I was trying to do my custom sort of GraphQL, and I did not have time to debug it. So I'm showing you all another example, which is the official examples. So for example, this is like a Postman collection that is imported into Microcks, and it automatically builds on the examples that you add in Postman. So where's my Postman? Okay, so for example, you can add an example in Postman collections, and that automatically is picked up by Microcks. So you then get something like this, which has a URL to mock your application, and you also get the response for that, right? So let me see if this works. Oh. Just a second. I think I lost it. Okay. Let me just try this. So yeah, the demo gods are not with me today, but yeah, so this is how you can easily mock an API. So there is no code involved here. So if you notice, I have not written any resolver or anything as such. All I have done is given it a Postman collection, which I can export it from here itself and import it into Microcks. And the other thing I've given is the SDL schema language, right? The GraphQL schema. And with that, you can easily mock your data. All you have to do is maybe add an example, and that should be pretty easy because there is no code involved in the entire process. So this is how you can do like a no code GraphQL mock testing within, I guess, 5 minutes if you have the right files. But yeah, so this is the data that you have in the Postman collection basically that you add as an example, and this is what is shown to the user when they put the ID. So yeah, basically this is what I imported. One is the GraphQL schema, and the other is a Postman collection that I have imported. So yeah, these are the use cases of Microcks. Basically, you can use it in any with API providers like OpenAPI, gRPC, and all these things. The process is similar, and you can also use it with like Jenkins and all these things for automated mock testing. And yeah, that was a demo. Sorry, the demo is sort of done. I ran into a bit of issues uh, with our product and Microcks. The integration wasn't working, but I can show you how it looks like. So if I can quickly, do I have time? Okay, this doesn't look good to see, but one second. Cat tracks. Yeah. So basically, this is a Kubernetes API resource called API doc. This is how you define the schema definition in Gloo platform, basically, and then you just create a resolver map. So we also provide a mock resolve. Sorry. So we also provide a mock resolver, and because the actual resolver map wasn't working, I just went ahead and created a mock resolver. Uh, I know that's wrong, but this is how we also provide mocking in our platform. And with this, what you do is just map these two together. Yeah, so you can map this using anything as such. And since this is multi-cluster, right? So basically, if you have two Kubernetes clusters that are running Glue platform, you can reference a GraphQL resolver on a different cluster. So when I say different clusters, this could be anywhere. It could be two different data centers, two different regions, whichever you want. We support sort of multi-cluster very well, and it is all done via STO, but we translate to STO basically. And then you can just do a simple route. So if you notice here, basically if you have a Kubernetes service, you can just route it to the Kubernetes service by providing the name, the namespace, and the cluster. So it could be on any cluster again. And you can also do it via the matchers. So if I have a mock header in the request, it will send it to the Microcks client. But if I don't, it will send it to the production API. So it's very transparent to your applications. It's very transparent to your developers basically. And yeah, that is it for me. Really sorry if I dragged it for too long, if you all have got bored, but if you all have any questions, please go ahead. Okay, there are two.
Can you explain the use case? Like you mentioned the API gateway part. That's like pretty much any gateway would do, right? So how is it different?
So
And then the mocking part you said like it's doing. So is it like you pass on the certain header and it would just route the traffic to the mock server? Is that pretty much?
yeah. So I know the example is not exactly what I wanted to show, but basically Microcks itself is a API mocking platform which is made for mocking, right? So it's much easier to mock an entire API on that. So when you're testing your servers, right, in production basically, you could have your developer test just by sending a header mock with the platform, the gateway basically that we deploy. The gateway itself is just not only a GraphQL server, so we don't have a separate GraphQL server. The gateway itself has so it's built on Envoy, and you can do things like filters. So we have a GraphQL filter that we have written in C++, and that is loaded onto the gateway. So the use case is basically routing. So when you have routes in a multi-cluster environment, you can route it to any cluster whichever you have in your environment. So you could have 300 clusters and you wanted to route from one cluster to the other. You could just route it by just defining it in one section basically. We also provide like I showed you, right, we also have a mock resolver, but that we don't recommend for like production use cases. That is more like, when you're just getting started or something like that. But Microcks is something that people use in production, right? So it's more in a way battle tested for production with mocking and all that. Does that answer it? I'm not.
I'm still trying to make sense of like where would it get the data from? Like would it be the production data? Would it be mock data? That micro.
So are you talking about the Microcks part?
Yeah.
So the Microcks is just two things, right? You only need a GraphQL schema definition and you need a Postman collection with examples in it. So your examples is basically the data that it uses. So it doesn't store it in any database or anything as such. It just pulls it from the Postman collection.
And that would help with the contract testing of production.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So in GraphQL you have scalars. So you can add, for example, like a JSON scalar or like a custom string that has like some form of formatting or something on the side. Can you add that mock into this?
So yeah, I get what you're saying. So we do have something called as transformations, and we use JQ. So if you're are you talking about like via Microcks, right? If you want to transform the data.
If I want
Got it, got it, got it.
mock that?
So I'll have to a little bit check on that, but I could think of a possible solution is if that's not possible. Since you're using the gateway itself has something called the transformation. So you could transform the JSON to whatever you want before sending it. Yeah, we use JQ. So you can use JQ to transform it to anything that you want to show to the client. So you could get the data in anything, any JSON that you want. But there's sometimes like old applications, you don't want to send the same data to the client. So you can just use JQ and sort of mutate that data. So I think I have an example open. Let me see. So yeah, you can see there is JQ being used here. So you can do stuff like mutate it or send different kind of fields. I'm not sure why so for example, you could do like a bearer authorization key using JQ. So you have a lot of options with JQ. Since JQ is the normal tool that every developer uses for JSON, you can just plug it into the.
So if I had my custom type, I could use JQ
Yeah.
to map it to whatever type I want that particular mock to look like.
Yeah,
Maybe I want the string but with like dots or something.
yeah, you can do that. If you have a JQ function for it, you can do anything.
Use that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Any other questions?
Good platform, yeah, great.
Thank you.